the evolution of the hydroplane. They've been racing hydros in Seattle for 5 decades, and now we're ready to race again.
The 1999 Vintage Hydro Heat at Seafair, brought to you by Pemco Insurance, your home for the new millennium, now celebrating their 50th year.
The 50th anniversary of Seafair. The vintage boats are going out. Bill Rocky, I know, was on the deck there of one of the boats a moment ago, but they're waving him off so they can get the boats out on the course. There they go. Bill?
Steve, I almost went for a ride there, Steve. Dave Williams in the Madison was going to talk to him, but he's on a tough schedule here, so he basically told me to get off the boat because he's got to go. And these things are beautiful. This is really fun to look at. Everybody that's watched hydroplanes for so many years, this is really going to be fun to watch.
Ken Muscatel finally got the Miss Burien going. Let me set the field for you here, and then we'll bring in Mike and Scotty to talk about these boats. We've got the 1959 Miss Driftway.
Well, this is a great moment. The Tempest, watching that is painted as the Budweiser here. I actually turned the fastest lap in that boat that had ever been turned, and brought back a memory when I saw that boat. And a lot of people asked me, said, well, would you ever get back in these boats? And it's, no, not with the turbines. I'd kind of been there and done that. But, boy, if I could be in something that made noise again, I'd be back in a second.
Oh, man, this is worth the price of admission right here. Let me tell you, some of these boats are kind of masquerading a little bit, and I'll tell you which ones. The Miss Madison actually isn't the Miss Madison, believe it or not. That's the old Seafair's Mist. But it is painted up as the Miss Madison only because there's a motion picture being made called Madison about the brilliant Cinderella victory of the Miss Madison in the 1971 Gold Cup race, and they're shooting that with this particular boat. The original Miss Madison is in no condition to play itself in the movie, but boy, does that look great. Jim McCormick drove that to a victory of the Miss Madison in 1971 in the Gold Cup in Madison, Indiana. Turned that little town of 13,000 people on their ear, and then went on to win the Atomic Cup just 2 weeks later on the Columbia River. Dave is driving that one. Dave Williams, the president of the museum. And also out there, we have another boat under disguise, and that's the Atlas Van Lines boat. Driftway that you see, the 1959 Driftway, that's the real McCoy. That's the Miss Driftway. The Atlas Van Lines, which is bringing up the rear to the line here, was actually that one, the white one with blue trim, was actually the Pan Pac's Little Buzzard. That was a gold and orange and black trim boat on the 1970 Atomic Cup. Tommy Tucker Fultz was the driver, lost his life in that boat, in fact, in the same year, 1970, down in San Diego. And the bright red Miss Budweiser boat, that's actually Chuck Hickling's original Tempest. But the thing that I think has got to be one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. There's the Tempest boat that Scotty had the fastest lap in. In fact, when Chuck Hickling designed, built, and drove that boat at the age of 65 back in 1978. Bill Muncie was his crew chief. The boat you're seeing on your center screen right now, the drop sponsor 1967 Miss Budweiser, the latest completion, by the way, of the Hydroplane and Raceboat Museum. That is the real McCoy also. Bernie, who was looking at it just the other day, was absolutely enthralled with this gorgeous boat. Originally, it was the Notre Dame, the first Notre Dame in 1962. Colonel Warner Gardner drove that race boat. Later on, it was the Shoo-Shoo, then bought by Bernie to run the remainder of the 1967 season when his driver was killed. Bill Brow, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame last night here in Seattle. And Mike Thomas drove that particular boat to a brilliant victory over Billy Shoemaker in the Yellow Miss Bardol up at Kelowna, British Columbia, the 1967 BC Cup. So, well, I tell you, there's some terrific history here. This boat, of course, the third of the Thriftway line, the immediate successor to the Thriftway that hit the Coast Guard boat out here in 1958. Bill Muncie had his most successful several seasons aboard that boat. It was also called the Century 21 when it was promoting the Seattle World Fair in 1961 and 62. Willard Rose was the owner. This particular boat, the 60 Miss Burien, of course, started out its life as Tempest. Peter Weck owned the boat. It burned with Chuck Hickling driving it in the very first race. It was in here on Lake Washington, but it went on to run as the Seafair Pro and a variety of other names, and it ran for a good many years right up into the late 1970s.
Wow, if we just close our eyes for a minute and just listen, you'd almost think you were back in the middle to late 1950s, and there was no Seahawks or Mariners and not even a Space Needle, and everything revolved around Seafair and the boat races. Here come the big old piston boats down this front straight. Let's just listen as, well, almost all of them come down the front straight.
Well, that's a beautiful sound, isn't it?
Isn't that something? I'm a kid again.